Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Free Marketeers, the Free Market Foundation YouTube channel. Thank you all for being with us today. On today's episode, I have the great privilege and honor of speaking to one of South Africa's foremost experts on all things energy, Eskom, load shedding, electricity, and that is Mr. Ted Blom. Ted, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, you're most welcome.
So I guess just setting the scene, especially for our international viewers before we get into it. So load shedding was recently again announced and projected to last until the 17th of January, yesterday, Sunday. Then on the afternoon of the 17th, Eskom announced more load shedding on the 18th, today, Monday, with no announced end date. So Ted, I thought all things load shedding were fixed now. I thought Eskom was on the path to prosperity. So on that note, I'll hand over to you. I'm not going to be too effusive in sort of talking about your background. I think we'll let you do most of the talking.
Thank you very much, Chris. As I said previously, it's going to be a very brief presentation. I'm not going to try and wake up our sleeping dogs. So I anticipate that we'll be done within 15 minutes. It's just a quick outlook for the next couple of months and just to put it into context. So let's kick off. The agenda for today is breaking news, some background, a recap of history, path to destruction, and outlook. The breaking news is that last Sunday I was approached by one of the newspapers, The Citizen, as you can see on the link there, and they asked me about Kubrick, sudden breakdown, and what the outlook would be. And I had a look at the data, and I called the newspaper journalist back, and I said, "Oh my golly, it looks like we're heading for another problem." And I said that my analysis was that there's a high risk of load shedding as from Wednesday or Thursday, which was in the past week. And Eskom then came out and said that there was no load shedding imminent and that all the stocks were in place and that I was talking absolute nonsense. And this has been the sort of tune from the new management, who seemingly somehow seem threatened by me rather than to engage and see whether we can't do something together. I mean, I've had experience with Eskom inside, outside, back as a consultant since 1988. And in 2006, they hired me to sort out the coal roadmap, which they duly ignored. And that's when I saw that the organization was busy breaking down with corruption and ineptitude and incompetence. So it makes for a nice standoff. I said there would be load shedding. Eskom said nonsense, no load shedding. And lo and behold, last week, Thursday, we were hit with some load shedding. On top of it, of course, Eskom is undervaluing or understating the load shedding. By the time they hit you and me as the public at 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts, they've already interrupted with the virtual load shedding agreements with their big customers to the tune of at least 2,000 megawatts. So when Eskom says we're having phase one load shedding of 1,000 megawatts, it's actually, in fact, to the economy, it's a 3,000 megawatt shortage. And I see in the last week, Eskom has said level 2 load shedding. Well, the law says, or the rules of engagement says that level 1 is up to 1,000 megawatts. So as soon as it's gone over that, then it's not level 1 anymore, it's then level 2 load shedding. And Eskom this week has consistently been over 2,000 megawatts short, but they still call it level 2. So in actual fact, if you add the numbers together, not to confuse you, it's the 2,000 megawatts from the interruptible chaps, plus 2,000 megawatts from you and me, the public, plus the residual, which they are over 2,000 megawatts. So that, in fact, makes it about level 5 load shedding if Eskom was more transparent and honest in its dealings with you and me and the public. Let's go to some background. Why are we in this situation? People often ask me that, and it's very easy. This is Eskom's Cavalier Grand Strategy. If you see on the graphs, you'll see that there's some blue lines. Those are the old power stations that are 46 years and older. Under the previous disposition of around about 2006, 2007, 2008, Eskom says, well, we're going to dunk these old power stations and we're going to replace them with these two new ones right at the bottom of the graph, Medupi and Kusile. And we'll have a 6-shooter at our hands, and it will be a seamless transition, and everything will be fantastic. Little did they realize that they were totally incompetent in building new stations. They'd lost their competency because they hadn't done that for quite a while, together with corruption within Eskom. The initial Medupi contract I saw, tender that came in, was around 34 billion. We're now running at 250 odd billion plus. And ditto for Kusile. There was no tender, in fact, for Kusile. The powers that be at the time said that they're doing such a fantastic job. They just photocopied the Medupi documentation and awarded it to the same contractors who gave them kickbacks on the Medupi supply. So what went wrong? Well, Eskom started cannibalizing the old power stations soon after that, not ordering parts and repairing them. And little did they realize that the thing would swing against them, and the new stations wouldn't be capable of adding the required or envisaged supply to the grid. As we know, Medupi for a long time ran at less than 60% availability. It was only when I challenged Eskom at one of the NERSA hearings that we actually got the facts. They kept on spinning the story that the problem is the old power stations and the new ones are a little bit late. What I didn't tell you, me and the public, is that the new ones were actually malfunctioning grossly. Medupi at its best at this time, about a year and a bit ago, was running at 60 or 59% availability, and Kusile at a disgusting 19% availability. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask you, would you take delivery of a plant that can only give you 19% of the promised outputs? And the answer is clearly no. So this takes us back to competency and corruption in Eskom, which unfortunately has just got bigger and bigger and bigger over the last 10, 12 years. And that goes hand in hand with the load shedding, which initially I warned about 3 days before it happened in 2008. And I consistently said that this is with us to stay until certain steps are taken by Eskom. The senior management and the board of Eskom, all novices, it seems to me, and friends of the party, have consistently ignored my calls for engagement to try and sort this out. And in fact, at one stage, the former general manager of Eskom, who had the highest availability in the history of Eskom of over 90%, we volunteered our services gratis, free of charge, to Eskom. And we were told they were taking us up, and we're still waiting for the email. Unfortunately, he's deceased in the meantime. So let's go to the next thing. The path to destruction. I guess it started in 2001 with the change of ownership and the business model of Eskom, as well as the governance things. In 2001, when the former general manager was in charge of Eskom, and he had a 90% plus availability, they also had the cheapest costs in the world. And in fact, Eskom was voted in New York the utility of the year globally. And that was the highlight of Eskom's 100-year history or 80-year history at that stage. And ever since then, it's just been downhill. And there's certain ex-Eskom people who have confirmed this to me. It's my personal observation, but it's good to hear from people who are highly qualified and senior people at Eskom and who've also been expelled by the organization, that I have the clock in the right place. The problem is with the Zondo Commission, who've asked me to come and help and explain some things, is their term sheet starts in 2010. By 2010, the seeds were sown. The seeds of destruction were sown. So that's not going to help the Zondo much if we only start at 2010. We need to start where the corruption started. Second issue came on was accelerated BBBEE. It resulted initially in fronting because there was no black suppliers who were competent and financed to supply Eskom with outsourced skills. And at the same time, they started exporting skills that were inside the organization. The third point is cadre deployment. That's become very, very clear. In the last few years, it's so blatant, it's not even hidden anymore. But that also started from 2001. The fourth point is political interference. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to insult you to try and explain that. I'm sure you're more than adequately involved about that, informed about that. And together with the political interference is this whole ideological change, where Eskom was a state-owned entity independently run by a council. The council was disbanded, and the ideological differences started being forced onto Eskom. And by means of forcing them to change the profile of the workforce, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to go through that. You're more aware than I am. The fifth step is grand looting, state capture. It really started getting its teeth in 2006, and that includes Medupi. I've told you about the tender irregularities, Kusile, the similar. Ngula came on, was tendered at 9 billion. The final cost there is 40 billion. Nobody's even talked about looking at the corruption at Ngula. We've got lots and lots of documentation, and probably the best documentation available about that. And the beneficiaries of that who are all party members. Together with that, Nuclear 2, which has gone silent and was hidden, that involved corruption of about $2.5 billion. And then, of course, the new coal procurement plans of Eskom, of which the highlight was Mr. Molefe's quote of, I don't want to eat the coal mine, I just want to eat the coal. I don't want to own the bakery, I just want to eat the bread. Well, that has certain implications as well, and until that is sorted out, because it hasn't been sorted out, Eskom will continue with load shedding, and I'm forecasting at least for the next 5 years with the coming and going. The next issue is the 3-month outlook. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is where you need to really focus on where we are. This is an Eskom document, as you can clearly see. And it's been touted, my apologies, let's just go back. It's been touted in the newspapers by all the Johnny-come-latelys who claim to be Eskom experts. The two columns that you want to focus is on the right. The one is the first one is the planned risk level. That is 14,000 megawatts being dumped by Eskom. And the second one is the likely scenario, which is in excess of 16,000 megawatts of unavailable power into the economy. It's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. If you go 2 columns before that, the planned maintenance, you'll see it stands at about 8,000 megawatts. Add to that the 12,000 megawatts unplanned outages, you get to 20,000 megawatts. As soon as Eskom goes above 11,000 megawatts, you have load shedding. There is no reserve margin at Eskom. They relied on the IPPs. Today it's pretty overcast where I'm sitting, so the solars aren't performing as they should, and anyway they're going to stop working when the sun goes down, as they do every day, and that's not going to save Eskom's bacon. Now, if you go down these two third last and fourth last columns, you'll see that the total of those two is consistently above 20,000, other than in March, the last week in March. It drops a little bit below 20,000 megawatts of shortfall. So if you've got 11,000 they can handle, that means it's 9,000 they can't handle. 9,000 megawatt shortage is actually level 9 load shedding. And therefore, I feel quite comfortable saying that I will not be surprised that between now and the end of winter, which is further than this graph, we will experience level 6 load shedding pretty much for certain, and even level 8 and above is a possibility. It's a nightmare. It's not good for industry. It's terrible for investment. But those are the facts that Eskom has put on the table in the intervening period. And only a fool will ignore the facts that are on the table. Eskom's going to come out. I know they'll come out after this with a lot of spin. These are their numbers, their tables, my interpretation, and my analysis of the outcome based on their numbers. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's short and sweet, and I say thank you very much. We can go over to Q&A.
Thank you very much for that, Ted. When we confirmed the interview, I was very much looking forward to talking to you, and then I thought, what is Ted gonna give us to chew over? So I'm sitting here a bit in shock. I shouldn't be, because what comes out of South Africa's state-owned enterprises shouldn't shock us anymore. But it's quite something to see the numbers that you've provided and your own projections. Ladies and gentlemen watching, of course, if you have questions, please post those in the comments. I'll start off with one of my own questions for you, Ted, just around the quote-unquote proposed unbundling of Eskom into these separate entities. Do you think that's a step in the right direction? I mean, as a sort of libertarian, I don't necessarily want to give the government credit where it's not due kind of thing, but do you think that could be a step in the right direction, or do you think it's misdiagnosing the deeper problems?
Yeah, and I'm on record of this. I worked in Eskom's finance department, and I consulted, or internally, I consulted throughout the organization. So I sat in a unique position that I had in-depth exposure in the early years to all the divisions, because my sub-consultants who worked for me, they did all the other divisions and reported monthly. So I've got a pretty wide oversight as to what's going on. And let me tell you that in those years, Eskom had a chart of accounts. I don't know if you know what a chart of accounts is. A chart of accounts is giving a code, accounting code, to every business unit or every division or department. So if you cut and dice the accounting chart of accounts codes, you could have, even 30 years ago, you had insight into what the costs were in any division in Eskom. All you needed is the code for that chart of accounts for that division, or SBU as they were called in those days, and you would have full sight, line of sight, into what that division was costing you, whether it was at Megawatt Park, or whether it was Matimba, or whether it was at Tendrina, or wherever it was. So for the clever boys who are now currently running Eskom and saying the solution is unbundling, it's a pot of nonsense. Because they already have insight into what goes on a weekly and a monthly basis. It's now live. In those days, it wasn't quite live because we didn't have the software. But on a weekly basis, you should be able to ascertain exactly what's going according to budget, out of budget, where there are problems, red flags, etc., etc. That's the one issue. The other issue is, for my sins, I've got a half a legal background, and I've done some time in the banking industry. And let me tell you now, a banker who's got a servitude or a lien on any of Eskom's assets, and currently the loan book is underpinned by Eskom's assets in full. There is no banker in the world that I've ever met who's going to release the security he holds against the debt that Eskom owes him. So how do you think they're going to take something that's in company Eskom Holdings, pull it out, give it a different shareholding, and release the assets from the banker's lien to go and borrow more money? It's not going to happen. Believe you me, it's not going to happen. It's like, going to your banker and asking him for an umbrella. When it's raining, he ain't going to give you an umbrella. He's going to just hold on to his securities. That's all he's going to do. And this is the same with Eskom. Eskom is so bankrupt that nobody will want to touch it. And the current investments are high flight investments. They're there because of the coupon, and the moment there's an increased risk or whatever, they'll disappear. And we've seen that time and time again. The bankers are saying they'll only come to the party if there's additional government guarantees.
Thanks, Ted. Our next question is from Hanu Labuskaghni. Thank you for the question, Hanu from Broadband. Ted, do you anticipate 2021 to be South Africa's worst year of load shedding yet? And then the second part of the question, why do you believe load shedding will continue to be implemented on and off in the next 5 years?
Okay. The outlook on Eskom's own data is worse than last year. And is probably, if it occurs and materializes, will be the worst in the history of Eskom. Eskom will tell you it's because they're trying to fix up the fleet, and I understand that. And they said they'll do it within 12 months to 18 months. My prognosis was 5 years and 600 billion rands. Eskom already owes 580 billion rands in debt. So they need another fresh 600 billion to reconfigure and remanufacture the stuff that has reached its half-life and needs serious fixing up. Together with that, Eskom's actually inflicting itself more harm by incompetent people being in charge of the attempted fix-ups. And I've got a myriad, and a lot of them are very technical, and I don't want to bore and lose your audience with technical jargon. But believe you me, that fixing up a power station where the turbines weigh 300 tons extra, it's not like doing a jigsaw puzzle at home. That's the one thing. As far as the 5-year scenario, I was hired in 2006 to look at the coal roadmap going forward. Why? Because the coal mines or the coal power stations were getting to their end of life of 40 years, And the concomitant coal supplies, which were dedicated to those power stations, was also naturally coming to its end of life. And coal is non-renewable. Once you've burnt it, it's finished. You've got to find a new source of coal. And what we did is we had a look at it, and we said that around about 2016, a lot of the power stations that have dedicated supply in Mpumalanga will start running out of coal supplies. And the problem with that is that they then start buying in coal from every Tom, Dick, and Harry under their BEE and accelerated BEE programs. And Eskom was not built to accept coal by the truckload. Eskom was built to get dedicated coal from coal mine suppliers on a conveyor, least cost, continuously from a reserve that had been previously explored properly with the geology, etc. So they knew what was coming, what was in the pipeline for the next 30 or 40 years. Now they've run out of the coal, and they're buying coal from any guy who's got a truck and a dog and something that looks dark on the back. And the Eskom has paid the price, and they will pay the price in future. In that the quality of the coal that they're getting is unfathomable. Until recently, it had no weigh bridges, believe you me, open for fraud, and also no quality control. If you're getting at Majuba, for instance, 1,500 loads of coal being dumped in the stockyard every day. It's heaps of coal all over the show. No flags, no label. You don't know where it comes from. It could be rock, it could be sand, it could be low volatile stuff, it could be anything. Then you run the risk of putting that stuff into your boiler because you're now under pressure to keep the fires alive. And then you get hit with outages. And that's why you'll see Eskom's bunker oil accounts have gone through the roof. Why? Because they're buying crappy coal, excuse my French, and they have to keep the fires alive by injecting oil into the furnaces. So that plan that we put together in 2006 to 2008, which I was privileged to be a member of, an outside member on behalf of the finance department, and they included world consultants, McKinsey, and all the clever people at a hangover cost. That never got implemented. You can go to the newspapers and you can Google Mr. Damas, who was in charge at that time, and the 40 new collieries. We suggested 20 new coal mines. He said, man, I'll do better than that. I'm going to open 40 new coal mines. Go and Google it. It's there. It's in the press. Not one new coal mine has been opened up since 2007. Not one. So, yes, you can only run. Making electricity is very simple. It's more than 100 years old. You take energy or coal, you just convert it to electrical energy. And the cheaper you can do it and the more economical you can do it and with bulk and extra, that gives you the competitive advantage. And South Africa in 2001 had the competitive advantage of being the best utility in the world and the cheapest price. That's all gone out of the window. And so, yes, Hanu, until Eskom... Now, the problem is they were told to do that. The other problem is the new coal is in the Waterberg. It needs to be railed to the Mpumalanga. Otherwise, you must pick up the power station and take it to the Waterberg. And there's no water in the Waterberg, so you'll have cooling problems. But Eskom was supposed to, in 1995, under the former general manager, Mike Dietz, who's now deceased, was given the job of building and upgrading the railway line from Lephalale or Ellisras through to Middelburg, because the line only had a capacity of 5 million tons a year. And when this scenario that I've just described eventuates, Eskom's going to need eventually more than 90 million tons a year to be shipped. And that's a big difference. So you have to upgrade the quality of that railway line severely or drastically to be able to increase your load 20-fold. That hasn't happened. Not a single stitch. Transnet has talked about many uploads, upgrades, and so on. But the amount of capital that needed to be done and time that needed to be done to get the servitudes has never been fully rolled out. So if you start today, it will take at least 10 years to do that upgrade of that railway line. So what is Eskom doing in the meantime? They're buying from rats and mice. They have to go deeper, and they use smaller, uneconomical sources of coal. It's available in the Mpumalanga area, and the price has gone through the roof. The contract price at one stage was below 150 Rand a ton. Certain people with the political connections were getting 500-600 Rand a ton. The current price of buying coal in by Eskom is north of 500 Rand a ton. In fact, the Guptas came in at 580 odd Rand a ton. And that was all part of the capture and deliberately not developing the new mines so that friends and family can be the new suppliers of Eskom at a much, much higher tariff. And of course, that has seen the coal price cost of Eskom go from around 12 billion rand a year to north of 60 billion rand a year, and increasing every year.
Ted, Jason asks, how likely are we to experience a national blackout within the next 5 years?
Yeah,
Putting
you
on
know what?
what?
I'm not yet to scare people. And you know what? When you run something that's pretty sophisticated, because South Africa's network is the most sophisticated and bigger than Europe's, as far as I'm aware. And you need to keep this system in balance 24/7, and that's done from Simmerpan outside Germiston. So there's two problems. It could be human error, or it can be technology error. Human error, there's always scope for. People can fall asleep at the job or whatever. I've been inside that control room, and I believe you me, watching a screen for 12 hours non-stop, is one time or the other. You might make a mistake or go to the bathroom at the wrong time, as it happened at the Duver power station, and they blew a turbine. The guy who was supposed to watch the dial went to the bathroom, and 30 seconds later the thing blew. He didn't release the valve that he was supposed to do. So that's always a possibility. I can't tell you what that possibility is. That's human error. Technological error, yes, if you're running the system as hard as you are now and you're switching it on and off and on and off, transformers and electrical systems were not designed to be switched on and off and on and off. So every time you're taking the load down and then you're peaking the load 4 hours later, and then you're taking it down and then you're peaking it. You're looking for trouble. Believe you me, you're looking for trouble. Why? Because the oil condensate that cools the transformers settles down and it forms a little bit of a mound at the bottom. Eventually that mound will grow, and next time you switch it on, it will just arc out and that grid will be gone. And if the control room's not awake to try and keep the balance in the grid, that could result in a severe meltdown. And they do happen. It's happened in America. It's happened in India more than once, apparently. It's happened in Pakistan, apparently. You know what? It's not something to be... the other side of the coin is you need to ask yourself, if it does happen, how long will it take for Eskom to recover? And that's also how long is the string. It depends on the level of damage done. If there's a little minimal damage, Eskom can probably bring the grid up within 2 weeks. If it's severe damage, you're talking about 10 years or never. But I don't want to scare people. Let's be positive and hope that the people at the control room at least are competent and very, very alert.
Then, Ted, we have two questions from Barbara Sattler. Thank you, Barbara. Number one, what is the outlook for Kubrick Power Station?
Okay, so what Eskom has done is, in fact, I'm quite familiar with Kubrick because I joined Eskom with top security clearance in those days, so I was allowed access to the data. Kubrick has reached the end of its commercial design life. And normally one would look and see whether you can maybe do a life extension like you do with a coal mine and so on. The benefit of a coal mine is everything, coal power stations, everything's above the ground. You can open up and have a look. The problem with Kubrick is that it's a machine in running, and you can't really get inside and do an inspection while the thing is generating power. It's just too dangerous, it's too radioactive, etc. They're now taking Unit 1 down because it showed quite large leaks on the steam generators. And because they were planning to do a life extension on Kubrick, they'd already pre-ordered the generators about 3 or 4 years ago. They did arrive in October last year, and they were going to be starting to implement the exchange as from next month. My problem is that to safeguard Kubrick, because we know that nuclear plants and earthquakes and tremors and tsunamis and things don't go well together. Kubrick is built on a big lilo, in layman's language, if you and I can understand each other. And that lilo is supposed to absorb any shock or movement in the earth so as to keep the plant from cracking and picking up excess stress. And that's all good and well. As far as I know, in the last 40 odd years since Kubrick has been commissioned, nobody's been down there and actually had a look at seeing whether that neo polyurethane or whatever it's made of, lilo, is still in good condition. That lilo lies in seawater, as far as I'm aware, because it's next to the coast and the seawater seeps in under the sand. And I would say that if I was looking at that plant, and look, I'm not a nuclear engineer, I'm not an engineer of any sort, so just take it from where it comes, with good intentions. I would have thought that they could have done like the diamond miners do, put a shaft next to the power station, go across and go and have a look, take a sample or do something, or scan it, do an X-ray scan or something to check that lilo or that platform foundation is still in good condition and can last another 40 years before I even order a steam generator at vast cost to extend the life of the power station. So yes, that's the scenario with Kubrick. On paper, everything looks fine. The technology is old. It's a category 1 technology. We're now at category 4, as far as I'm aware. But it's all legacy technology. It's big power stations that are high pressure vessels that have to have very, very close tolerances to make sure that things don't go wrong, etc. I would say that the new technology, and Eskom has had a bite at the cherry, and they messed that up as well, is the new pepper bed technology, which the Russians and the Chinese, to the best of my knowledge, have now sorted out and are in the process of rolling out. At one stage, Eskom was the leaders, together with Westinghouse from America, and again, due to political interference and ineptitude and all the normal things, as it seems to me, that go on at Eskom, that project was eventually closed. And if my estimates are correct, cost you and me, the public, close to 40 billion rand. That was just wasted. It could be less, but that's a number that I've got in my head. And really, the small-scale embedded generators, which generate between 50 and 200 megawatts, they are low-pressure vessels, so they're safe, they can't explode. They've got much smaller cooling needs. They can be air-cooled, as far as I know, so they don't need to be built next to the sea. If you, in fact, distribute them to where they are needed in the various towns, you don't even need a grid. So you don't have the risk of a grid failing you as well. And I would assume that once those things are manufactured at bulk levels, the cost will be very, very competitive. And you know what? User pay can do it. The municipalities can generate their own power, and they will have a source of income. And that's industrial power, 50 megawatts to 200 megawatts. You can actually couple them together, modular, if you need bigger ones. So yes, I hope that answers your question.
And then Barbara's second question, Ted, is she's asking whether South Africa is still exporting coal.
Yes, South Africa is still exporting coal. In fact, it's one of the top 3 or 4 exporters in the world. But by design, when Dr. van der Bijl in 1923 was given the mandate by the government of the day to start up Eskom, they really either were very clever people, far cleverer than you and me probably, or they had lots of luck. What they did is they said that along the line, Eskom understands that South Africa needs revenue from coal exports. So Eskom plant has been designed to use low quality coal. Okay, the big issue is not the quality of the coal, but the consistency, because you need to set your burner flames at a certain level to generate a certain amount. It's like making a braai. You don't want your braai to be too hot, because then you're going to burn the meat and you can't unburn your meat. Secondly, you don't want your flame to go up and down, up and down, up and down, because then you could wait all day to eat your braai. You end up with a boere braai where you eat at 11 o'clock at night. So yes, South Africa does export, and it does export an export quality coal. The quality of that's gone from 27 megajoules per kilogram down to about 23, 24, 25 now. With the customers also changing. Most of it used to go to Europe and to Japan. The lower grades are now going to China and to India. So yes, but Eskom's mean quality of coal, if it was guaranteed at 20 megajoules In fact, we had a bet, and that's where the McKinsey consultants came in, because I said to them, people are lying to us here. Eskom can actually burn coal of a much lower grade. It's the consistency that's important. And in 2008, we proved that Eskom could burn 18 calorific value, or 18 megajoules per kilogram coal quite well. And the McKinsey guy, I still remember the word. He said, man, all you need to do is change the management style from foot up to foot down. And I said, no, look, I'm a South African. I've studied in America, but I don't understand this. He said, foot up management is what Eskom's been doing for the last 80 years. It means the manager sits on his desk with his feet on the desk, and he doesn't do anything. Foot down management is he gets off his butt and he walks through the plant and he manages and controls and observes the quality of the performance of the plant. So what it means is Eskom needs to just get going, appoint people that are competent, and do active management instead of passive management. Don't wait until the alarm bells go off. Actually, take a walk during your shift and make sure things are running well.
Our final question, unless any more come in, is from Lisa from the Mercury. And she asks, Ted, in your view, what should be done to fix Eskom? From my point of view, and this is, I suppose, a simple answer, there needs to be competition in electricity provision and generation. That'll in turn lower prices, and then consumers can go between sort of service providers, as it were. But you can, of course, disagree with me there. I just wanted to get the sort of the FMF's answer in there while I could. Over to you, Ted.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have now suffered enough under the current management and disastrous ideology of this government. And they really had the interests of the people and industry and jobs and survival at heart. They would immediately, and I call on the minister, immediately open up the playing field, not for these toys of renewables. Everybody is banging on about renewables. I read an article the other day, a scientific article, for goodness sake. The total renewable output in the world is less than 1.5% of supply in the world. So really, they are toys. They're not up to industrial standard. It's fine for your household. Get yourself off the grid. You can afford batteries, etc. But at the industrial level, you can't do it. In fact, if the UK wanted to go completely renewable, they wouldn't have enough land to put the renewables up. They'll have to put half of the stuff up in the sea. So that just should give you an indication of where we're going. Yes, I think we need to open up the field and let the private sector satisfy the demand, especially because the profit umbrella at Eskom and the tariff umbrella is so high. It's 4 times what it should be. So competitors could come in at about a quarter or a little bit more of the price of what Eskom's currently charging, and murdering the economy and citizens in this country. So yes, I really would welcome. I mean, it would be a gift from heaven if we had some open-minded ideology and fit for purpose stuff that will work for the people. Give the people the incentive, give them the tax rebates or give them the tax write-offs, so that they can invest in private energy. Xstrata, the former head of Xstrata, tried to do that, and he's pretty close to government. You'll know that, and even he gave up because the red tape and the strangling of any competitive to Eskom, a competitive threat to Eskom, is so high that this government will bend over backwards to throttle anybody who wants to make energy and provide a solution, a viable solution, economical solution, and much cheaper solution available to Joe Soap and the public. And believe you me, if we don't do this, and I'm backed by the CSIR, I don't love the CSIR, but it suits me. I would like to use their backing. That if we don't do this, we are looking at, in their words, level 5 to level 8 load shedding in the next 5 years.
I can't think of a more appropriate note on which to end, a very realistic note. So on that note, Ted, thank you so much for your insights and for your time today. To the viewers and the listeners, thank you, of course, for watching today. We hope you found it insightful. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and share it on your different social media platforms. If you'd like to engage with Ted further, you can use the email address in the description below. and just send your queries to that. The video will be up later for those of you who might be coming late to it. It will be up on the channel. So please remember to subscribe to the channel as well. That's always very important. Just to give you a heads up, later this week, we'll have 2 more episodes coming out, one on Austrian economics, and then the second one where I'll be talking to a representative from FinFind about their report last year about the effect of the lockdown and the pandemic on small businesses. But once again, Ted, thank you very much. To everyone watching, we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.